men can have love for the truckie. Beautiful minds, but we love getting ugly. Risk takers with a clover, man, we love getting lucky. You run, we chase fire, I love when it ducks me. Tones go off, house watch, read the address out. 1075, get up off the magic couch. 500 gallons prepared for the baddest drought. Who else you want on the way when disaster's out? Can't even get a little bit rattled when you enter with exit apparel. Mayday, member down, they'll drag you. You won't get this from every Tom, Dick, and Harold, but here's a view from the top floor with Mickey Farrell.
Welcome back to another episode of The View from the Top Floor. Today's episode is Mike Smith, Engine Company 48 out of the Bronx. I had Mike on for episodes 35 and 37, so if you didn't see those, make sure you go back and check those out. Mike Smith is just one of those individuals that when you meet, you automatically know right off the bat that you're dealing with a very genuine human being. I love talking with Mike. I love talking fires with Mike. He loves this job so compassionately, and you can tell that this love comes from the standards that were set in Engine Company 48. So those of you that are not familiar with the FDNY and the history of Engine 48, there was standards set there long before Mike got there that shaped Mike's career. Mike talks a little bit about that in this conversation. We talk communication on the fire ground, communication on the fire floor. We talk about the positions in the engine company. So without any further ado, my good friend, Mike Smith.
All right, here we are.
Here we are.
Doc Watson's. You ever come here on St. Patrick's Day?
No, never.
This is a good spot.
Yeah?
Yeah, I haven't been here in some time, but this used to be one of my go-tos.
Yeah, I mean, nice area.
Yeah.
Nice buildings.
I used to take the bus, the Loser Cruiser, from the west side,
Okay.
the east side, to 86th Street and walk down just to come here.
Okay.
Good spot.
It's nice.
So thanks for coming down, though. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
We've been trying to do this for a long time, once again. Following up the 2 episodes that we did in the past, which I have to say that gotten tremendous reviews to the point where you don't realize the things, what you're saying, the things that you're doing, but it's changing the culture across the country. And it's pretty crazy how a stupid little podcast people actually dial into and really can get outside of Webster Ave. And that culture that's been built over the years from your senior members and the culture that you're keeping going, working in that firehouse, it really is having an impact on the nation, on the fire service in general. And that's pretty powerful.
I mean, yeah, that's great.
But this was something that we wanted to talk about. I wanted to jump on and just chat with you about is communication, not necessarily engine and truck, but communication in general on the fire ground, where yes, we have obligations, we have almost checkpoints we have to hit throughout the beginning stages of a fire, especially. But then like once we get operating and that threshold, beyond the threshold, the communication factor, which I don't think it's spoken about very often because I don't think everyone understands it. And it's almost like a Zen moment.
Okay.
That fire apartment, that fire room, everything is happening in real time. As you know, the nozzle is the best position on the job. I stand behind that as much as I'm a truck guy. It's really hard to argue there. But being in the front seat, especially as an officer or the inside team in a truck, it is a Zen-like feeling, and it's no one speaks about it.
Okay.
So maybe we can tackle that a little bit as well. But let's start with some of the communication things you look at as a chauffeur to begin with, because you do drive. You don't have the seat, but
Right.
you do drive. And I can imagine driving 48 engine. There's tremendous stress behind it because you guys are that good, and there's zero room for mistakes, and it all falls on the MTO.
Right. So you're talking chauffeur communications as a whole?
Yeah, just like when you're responding to a fire as the
Okay.
chauffeur, what are some of the things that like checkpoints you're hitting? Boom, boom, boom. What zone are you in?
So my very first due chauffeur
Correct.
job, I was driving my lieutenant that just recently got promoted. We were clearing from a box. We got to run for fire. We're second due. It's a second due box for us. I didn't turn the MDT. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know the address. He gave me directives. He said, Mike, when you get on Fordham Road, make a right, then you're going to make a left on Davidson. I said, you got it, boss. Going down Davidson Avenue, I'm looking because I don't know the numeric. He goes, Mike, drive straight. We got smoke in the street. We're getting waved in. So I said, okay. So I drive up. It's a PD. We know we're going to work. We know we're going to work. Officer goes, Mike, I'm going to go in. I want to see it. And then I'm going to radio you, and you transmit it. Nice and calm. Now, he knows this is my first time ever doing this. And he set the tone. He goes in. I bypass the building because it's a private dwelling. Surrender the building for the truck. My hydrant wasn't too far away. And he called me by my name. He was like, 4H to chauffeur. Mike, go ahead and give it. Nice and calm. Jump in the cab, engine 4H to the Bronx with an urgent, transmit to 1075. Now, he's setting the tone without even knowing it.
Yeah.
He's not frantic or anything. Some transmissions that you want to make when you're a chauffeur that I didn't make, and I think due to the caliber of the officer that he is, he picked up on it. I dropped booster, and I was very close to my hydrant. I hooked up to my hydrant, and that transmission that is a good heads-up move to make is when you're transitioning from booster to hydrant. Chauffeur to 4.8, you're on hydrant. I never made that transmission. Now, I think his internal clock was ticking, and he radioed me. It's like, Mike, how we making out on the hydrant? I've been on hydrant for like 5 minutes. But when he radioed me, I was in the process of refilling my booster. So I'm like, yeah, Lil, we're still on booster because I'm refilling the booster off the hydrant. And again, he called me by my name. He's like, Mike, get help if you need it. Nice and calm. The chief in command picked up on that. And so did the chauffeur standing next to me. He's like, dude, you know you're on hydrant, right? And I'm like, yeah. But, clearly the chief was like, command to 4H chauffeur, do you need help? And I was like, negative, chief. I got the hydrant right now. We're on hydrant water. But my officer set the tone just with him talking to me in the cab. And that was something that I took away from that job being my first new chauffeur job. Again, made mistakes. But I just remember that, like, he was just nice and calm.
When you make it personal, it takes the edge off.
Yeah.
So when he said 4.8 to 4.8 chauffeur, you answer, then you say Mike.
Yeah.
It puts you at ease.
Oh, 100%.
Like, all right, things are good.
100%.
Things are good. No one's screaming. We're cool. We're all on the same page, right?
Yeah.
And then that's an important transmission, going booster to hydrant, making that transmission from the truck standpoint.
100%.
I mean,
now you could get after it.
Yeah. So that's something as an officer, I'm always listening for that transmission of that transfer.
Right.
So that's an important transmission.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he was prompting you because knowing that, the guys are in ahead of the line. That's good though. But what's that feeling like though? Your first job, you turn the corner and spank down the street. They say the MPO has the highest heart rate and the highest stress level at a fire compared to, I think we may have talked about this in the last episode, possibly when you were on, but that aligns with the 1st 2 Battalion chief because they can't physically go and do something to help. They're just watching. Right. Watching unfold watching things go wrong, and they can't physically help. Right. That's how our job works. The 1st 2 chief and the 1st 2 MPO, because it's all about seconds. Something you said last time you were on, which I love, and I use it all the time. Engine firemen are problem solvers.
That's the engine's job.
Yes.
You have to be a thinker. You got to think. And you have to solve problems.
So everyone dismisses the engine, and I kind of get angry at this. I mean, it's all good fun and banter in the firehouse kitchen. Spending time in an engine, especially being an officer in an engine for I was there a year and a half, it's serious business. It is very serious business.
Yeah.
You cannot make mistakes. You stretch short, firemen die. You lose water, firemen die.
Right.
Look through all the history of all the line of duty depth fires.
A lot of it has to do with water, right?
Water.
Yeah.
It always comes down to water. So that stress level as the MPO, it's like skyrocket, right? So now your first fire, you turn the corner, it's banked down. What do you think?
Wish I wasn't driving today. Wish I had the Nozzleman
Yeah, well,
today.
I think it's probably wrong.
No, but you do your basic checklist in your head. I'm a huge advocate for that iPad that we now have.
Yeah.
I use that every run we go on, whether I know where the box is or not. Whether
you follow that to the fire?
I don't follow it per se, but what I like to do is I like to look at the street view, so I know what building I'm looking for, and then I like to find where the hydrants are located on that street. So I already have a game plan in my head. God forbid the dominoes start to fall the wrong way.
Yeah.
I'm ahead of the curve.
I think that's important. What a great tool we have now for a young chauffeur.
I think it's huge.
Because we all know the double parked cars, it's a real problem in New York City.
Oh, 100%.
So these senior chauffeurs are good. They know where every hydrant is. They know what the good hydrant is, the okay hydrant, the shitty hydrant.
Yeah.
They don't have to look back to an iPad. But for a new chauffeur, where when you're driving around and studying your first due area, you're not seeing hydrants because they're on cars.
Correct.
So it's like that's a whole different element, the fire ground. I don't know if they're talking about in chauffeur school. I'm sure they are.
Right.
But it's something not only a New York City problem, I would think any urban problem.
I think so.
Where people are parked on hydrants, double parked cars, all these things starts that first domino the wrong way.
Oh, 100%. But again, it goes back to the whole engine company. Your job is you're a problem solver.
Yeah.
All right. it sucks there's a double parked car there, but you have to do your job. You know what I mean? So you just overcome it. You know what I mean? And the way we break our new guys in and the way the company runs, I know that no matter who's riding the control position, I know that guy, I could lean on the control man. I'll say it again, I'm very fortunate. The area that I work, we're surrounded by companies that are outstanding. I know a second duo or third duo engine chauffeur, he'll help me out. A lot of things we do, I mean, we do it, companies in our area do it too, and a lot of it is rig positioning, especially when you're second and third duo engine chauffeur. You know, when you take that extra time to put the hose bed to the building, I mean, that right there is huge. You know, that's like a standard for us.
You have certain buildings where you know to back down the block, go the opposite way and back in.
I mean, every chauffeur's different. One of the senior seated chauffeurs that retired, I was picking his brain one day. And the way he went about being a chauffeur, I kind of adapted to it. Again, everyone has their way of doing things. If I'm not going to go way out of my way, if I'm second, third, extra engine, second alarm engine, I try to get as close to the first duo engine as I can. If I got to go way out of the way and it's time tedious, then maybe not. But I try to be as close to the first duo engine, no matter what duo I am. And if I pull up third duo and the second duo engine's there, I just go around the block and I cover the other end of the block. The mindset is I want to be as close to the first duo engine chauffeur as possible. God forbid those dominoes are falling. I'm not 2 aerials away from him. I'm in the vicinity. God forbid. You know what I mean? That's how that guy taught me. I kind of adapted to it. I think logically it makes sense. And again, you adapt. Like I said, if you pull up and second duo's there, then you don't just park and be a moth to the flame. You go around, you back in, and now both sides of the block are covered. Hose beds are facing the fire building and makes things so much easier.
Circling back, it's all about communication.
Communication's the job.
Yes, communication is the job. And I don't know if we're necessarily teaching our next generation how important communication is, because everyone's on the phone, like in the back of the rig. They're not looking, they're not sizing up. And as much as we try not to do it, we try to be the best examples. We all are always on our phone at one point through the tour and the rig. It's life. Yeah. It's real life today. And that's jeopardizing what we can do at fire, I think, because of communication. We're not good communicators anymore. A good officer is simply a negotiator.
Right. Okay.
You get to a fire as an officer, you're negotiating yourself in a position.
Right.
You come up on the second alarm, you go to the command post, Chief, 1 truck, we're here. What do you need us to do? Make that eye contact. If you don't come up and have a communication with that battalion chief or that deputy chief, the good chance you're not getting put to work. Right. You have to be a good negotiator.
Okay.
At a multiple, as well as the first 2 companies, it all comes to negotiating and maneuvering about the fire floor. Let's circle back to something you just said, that the second duo MPO was there. It was like, hey, Mike, you're on hydrant water.
Right.
But like, that's so important that if you're the second duo chauffeur and you walk up and see a young chauffeur and his mind's going crazy, he's all over the place, someone's fine to just go, brother.
Yeah.
You good? By just making that physical contact, man, like that sets us up for success right off the bat.
Oh, 100%. You don't want to step on anyone's toes, but you're there. You're the buffer. You know what I mean? And whatever you need, brother, I'm here. I'll help you, and I've had that happen more than once, unfortunately, where another chauffeur had to be like, hey, did you see this? But that's the job. That's what you're there for. You know what I mean?
So let's talk about the next step in the communication process.
Okay.
You and the officer turn the block, you have a fire. Now, let's switch positions. You have the control.
Okay.
What's the communication factor there? I know you're going to go estimate the stretch. You're going to bring the coupling to the chauffeur and say, this is how many lengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's how it's taught in the books. That's reality too, as well, right?
Yeah.
So break that down in the sense of the control position. Again, another position that gets overlooked. I remember once you asked me what's the most highest stress position on the fire ground.
Right.
And MPO and control guy is right there. Because if you estimate the stretch wrong, it falls on the control guy.
Right.
So it's so important. The control guy is squared away. He's paying attention. He's 100%. Communicating. And I do not like to see companies give details or truck guys the control. Not that you can't do the job, but there's a company pride level on that. Right. Where I'm not going to allow my company to stretch short.
Correct. So I was broken in very early on the control position with the guys that were in my groups. So they introduced the control position earlier, sooner rather than later, and that's how I learned. So that I adapted to that. So when I have new guys, a lot of times the drill is on the controls. If you don't get that right, whether you If you short stretch, which should be a no-no, but again, shit happens.
Yeah.
Or you drastically overstretch, which happens also. Now you're talking added friction loss. You're talking more hose that could get kinks,
yeah.
so on and so on. So that's why we drill on that. But communications, as far as the control man, I tell you what, communication I'm not really a fan of as far as the control.
Yeah, we did that.
I'm not trying to knock anyone or anything or talk badly about anybody. That's not my intent here. Everyone has their way of doing things. I don't know it all. I don't claim to know it all. When you hear control the nozzle, are you good? I'm not a fan of that. If that's your go-to, if you are constantly relying on that, I'm not a fan. And there's reasons why. One being, we're talking about communication right now. Obviously, the radio is constantly tied up at fires.
Yeah.
Constantly trying to get transmissions across. And when we go to fires, there are certain transmissions that need to be made.
That's not one of them.
That's not one of them. You read the fatal fire reports and you listen to radio transmissions, or you come back after a job and you're talking about it and you're like, oh, I didn't even hear that.
I think that might come from, and this is just, again, we're not pointing fingers, it's just
Right.
talking.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the control man, not confident in his ability, and pointing off to the nozzle man. You know what, bro? It's on you now, because you said you're good.
But that's the other reason why I don't like it, is as a control man, I feel you're not sizing up the situation correctly. You're using that, you're leaning on your nozzleman as a crutch, whereas you should be in the back of the rig, you should be reading the SIDS. Are SIDS 100% of the time? No, but if you're reading the SIDS and it says fire 4th floor, we got multiple calls, you're going to work or whatever, and you get out the rig and you see that you have smoke or fire coming out the 4th floor. All right, in my mind, I'm already thinking 5. Because the way I was taught, you're going to do floor plus 1.
Yeah.
All right? We teach our guys, no matter what the run is, class 3, odor of smoke, food on the stove. Class 3, the control man goes into the lobby no matter what, gets the layout.
Now, let me ask you about this.
Sure.
This came up in drill.
Okay.
Are you doing that on every run?
Every run.
I'm a component of that.
Okay.
Different parts of the city,
Okay.
smaller tenements,
Okay.
where they're not doing that, where the control guy going in, they feel like if you're going in and well hole or no well hole, that's kind of maybe up to the officers to say, well hole. All right,
Okay.
boom. So now we're tipped off.
All right.
I was always a component of the control guy going in because I'm the one responsible for the strength.
Right.
So now here's the argument. And
Sure.
It makes sense. Sometimes
Okay.
you go out, now the hydrant's no good. Hydrant, now we have to move the rig. Control guy's not there.
Okay.
He's in the lobby sizing it up.
Right.
So again, communication, control
Right.
chauffeur.
Right. But I could play devil's advocate on that. Again, coming from one of the senior guys that broke me in, his way of thinking was, if you're going to go in on every run with the lowest possibility of line coming off the rig, why would you not do it when you know line is coming off your rig? You have to get this right now. So why are you not going to do it? Now, I'm not saying you get off the rig and you lollygag and take your sweet ass time. No, you move with a purpose, because you're not running. You move with urgency. So for that scenario, I already got 5 in my head. I do my thing. All right, 2.5. So I'm going to round up 3, boom, 8. So now as I'm walking back to the rig, I know I'm looking for the reducer plus 2.
Yeah.
And there's my stretch.
My control days, I always took pride in beating the officer into the lobby.
Yeah.
Not because I want to beat the officer in, because
But
I
you
want to
have
get
to
in.
get back to
so
the
you
thing.
get back.
You
Cases
have
are back.
Correct.
The maneuver. I learned
Correct.
it the hard way. I remember going in once. It was on University Avenue.
Okay.
And then boom, they had to shoot down frozen hydrant. Now I was out of the mix. I found myself running back to the ring, and then it was like, holy shit! Like what just happened? you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And now I'm counting in the street like this. So there is an urgency to that position. I think it's a great thing to go in and size that up. And the argument is, well, we have a smaller building. What's the big deal to go in and resize it up? What wing? Because a lot of times it comes down to what wing, latest stairs, all these things.
Sure.
But when it's not that situation, it's a tenement across the street here. Like
Right.
there's no law tenement, which is like right there, right? So
Right.
you're going to go in and you're going to possibly be out of position in the
Right.
sense when it's a good conversation piece.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
a good drill topic.
And I'm not saying if you do that, going back to radioing your nozzleman, I'm not saying if you do that, that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's not my go-to.
Yeah.
But what I would tell you is, if for that scenario, if I have 8 on the ground and the line is still moving for whatever reason, all right, maybe there's something going on that I missed. Maybe that building is different or the layout is different. Then, okay, control the nozzle. You good?
All right, so let's talk about the next position on the riding list, the backup man. Some may think that there's no communication with the backup, but there is.
Oh,
And
that's-
I think for me,
That's crazy. Of course.
yeah. Well, like in public school, you say, your job is to back up the nozzle man, right? But
Yeah.
like, there's so many different maneuvers. That's the position that you're always moving in, right?
Yeah.
Top floor fire, if the cock off, you're down low,
Right.
Where it's a 2.5 pushing into a taxpayer, you're right there with the guy,
Right.
So
yeah.
the backup position, it's not necessarily because at the time when we came on the job, we didn't have radios. The backup man didn't have a radio,
Right. Yeah.
so it was like you were out getting the meal, you had to stick with the nozzle or control
Oh,
man.
shit. Right.
You
Yeah.
got no radio.
Right. Yeah.
So really, what communication are you having as far as the backup man?
Really, just telling them what you need. A lot of guys, especially newer guys, they no fault of their own, but what they're taught is to crowd the nozzleman, to be like right up next to him.
How do you feel about that?
Me personally, if I'm
Yeah.
a nozzleman,
How does 48 feel about that?
I think it varies depending on the guy who has the nozzle that tore. But I know a lot of us. Now, give me space, buddy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's not realistic. And what I mean by that whole stretching in an empty parking lot. Yeah, you're drilling, but again, the value of that I don't necessarily agree with, because that advancement and that stretch is completely impeded the moment you go inside a structure. The moment you have any type of clutter condition,
Even a rug or carpet
a
in the
rug
hallway.
or carpet, the moment you start operating the line and you knock something over or sheetrock is falling,
Yeah.
it's you have to adapt to that. It's not that realistic. I just want my backup man to keep the line low and absorb as much nozzle reaction as he possibly can. If I could lean on something, if I could put my cylinder in like a doorway with the line under my arm and just operate it like that, you know what I mean? I would prefer that, or
Let's
leaning
stop there.
leaning on a wall.
But stop right there.
Sure.
That's something that I think that gets lost in today's American fire service, and it's not taught in the fire academy so much. That was taught from our senior men. When you find a door jam and you bury your shoulder into that, and that's your backup, man.
Yeah,
You got your line and you're operating.
right.
I don't believe that's being taught so much out there in these parking lots. How can you teach that in a parking lot stretch? And in the basic fire academies, they're teaching you position firefighting, where nozzle back up, you back them up. Well, let's talk about backing off the backup man. He's got to get back because a coupling got snagged.
Right.
Or riding short,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. You put that shoulder right enough, and there you go, right?
Yeah.
I've used that so many times over the years, and then you don't even think about you're using it. It's natural. But that was passed on from senior firefighters.
Yeah.
right?
I mean, everything I've learned has been passed down from the senior guys that came before me. I mean, I didn't create anything.
Just to circle that back, just
Sure.
for anyone that's watching and listening, that's a great drill, is have the nozzle man go into a building if you're flowing water, and then just use the door jamb or a dresser or something as your backup man, get that line up, and you can operate by yourself and not necessarily have that guy up the nozzle man's ass. You know
Right,
what I mean? That's something we have to focus on. There's reality.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the communication between the two of them, just let them know what you need.
There's so much reinventing the wheel. You can't reinvent advancing a line. I don't care what anyone says.
If the wheel is round and it's rolling, man, and turning, there's no reason to reinvent it.
So with this reinvention of the
You know
fire
what I
service,
mean?
especially the engine company, there's all these techniques where you're doing like Phil Nelson's with the line.
Right.
Boom. You're in a project, you're in a tenement, you're in a private dwelling, you're in a taxpayer, I don't care where you are. Just get up against that wall. You know what I mean? So next position on the riding list, the nozzle man. Let's talk about some of the things that you're going through in your mind. So you have the nozzle.
Sure.
You pull up. Let's go with, we'll do a private dwelling because that's the most fires in this country, right?
Okay.
Pull up, come out of quarters, come down the block, you see a column of smoke, you know it's a private dwelling area.
Mhm.
Couple calls, you pull in the corner, get up, get your horseshoe, and off you go.
Okay.
What are you thinking about walking up to that building?
Hope it's not in the basement.
Right?
But
Yeah.
no, I hope there's a place to flake out my line. Hopefully there's enough space where I could keep the line as straight as possible to make a quick advance.
These are things you're thinking about, or these are just kind of checkpoints of like reality?
No, that's what you think about.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and at least me anyway. But again, in our area, it's hard because I don't think there's a private dwelling in my area with a front yard.
Yeah, I was going to say that they all.
Yeah, you go up a stoop, you know, you have the sidewalk or whatever. What I'm thinking about is I hope the truck found it. I hope the truck finds it quicker, you know, sooner rather than later, you know. And that's like every fire, I think, when you have the nozzle, you know what I mean? Because you talk about that internal clock ticking and you're like, oh man, we should have found this by now.
Yeah.
And especially in a private dwelling, when you're in a structure that the entire structure can burn and you have those voids, I want the truck to find it sooner rather than later.
Oftentimes we dismiss the private dwelling to being a quote unquote easy fire, which
Dude, it's scary, man.
they're scary because
They're
the tempo of those fires are a lot different than than a project fire
Right.
building around here. You know, I mean, every fire has its element of danger and what that danger is.
Right.
But that private dwelling fire, you're here, right? It's you're stretching. You call for water, something happens. Now we're here. That tempo is here, and the whole what just fucking happened.
You know, and then you get the auto exposure, you get the asphalt shingles. Next thing you know, you're like, oh. But as communication, I mean, again, private dwelling, any structure, I'd like to communicate with my officer and blessed the calibers of officers I've worked with.
I would think.
Tell me where it is, boss.
Yeah, I would think that at the level of 48 engine, or any good engine company, when you're done flaking and stretching, it's one of the things the boss just looks at you and like, good? Like, it's just like a nod almost. Like,
right, yeah.
Like an understanding, we're good. Because if you're not, you're going to tell me, and I know that. So it's you're ready to go, boom, engine one chauffeur, start walk. So it's like, that's that rhythm, that tempo we always talk about.
Right.
The good companies have it. The bad companies don't. And that's the difference between a good company and a bad company. Not the amount of fires you go to or don't go to. It's the ability to have that agreement in the moment.
Right.
We're good.
Yeah. You know, and you said earlier when I was talking about that example, and you were like, oh, he made it personable. You know what I mean? By calling my name. And you just mentioned it now. Even like my first captain, I thought was an amazing fire officer. My first nozzle job, he did that. It was in the cellar of a brownstone. And, you know, he came back and he was like, Mike, you ready? Yeah, Cap. All right, this is where we're going. And I just held on to his coat and he basically brought me to the fire and operated. And, you know, easy peasy, the fire went out. But it makes a difference when you have that you said it, like that personal connection. You know what I mean? Like you almost, I don't know if this is going to sound right, but you sound like, you feel like a little more safer. Like, oh, I'm going to be all right. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, you know what I mean? And again, I don't have to tell you, this is a dangerous job, but every officer I ever had the opportunity of working with, even, you know, like the one example I gave you earlier, you feel safe. Like, all right, he's working. We're good. We're going to be okay tonight.
And that is important. We maintain the company events, the time in the kitchen together. The job wants everything. It's not the job necessarily, but like the city wants everything, or just they don't want the kitchen to be that ball breaking kitchen, you know? Like, well, that's where that trust comes up. You're in the kitchen. You have a tough kitchen, and I've worked in some tough kitchens as well. Not as tough as you guys, but the toughest kitchen in the job. There's no question about it. So that time spent there was now you go out the door 20 minutes later, and like you have that relationship that, you know, this guy was in my corner 2 seconds ago. He's got my balls broken.
Oh,
or vice versa. He loves you and he's breaking your balls, you know?
Right.
But like that means so much in the moment when it comes down to life and death.
100%. Again, it sounds cliche-ish, but we're all we have. I think it's a fair statement to say that the fire department's going to continue when I retire. So we're all we have. And this is a dangerous job. And at some point in time in your career, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get injured.
Yeah. There's something about you, what you just said, which I don't think you believe in.
What's that?
The fire department continues when you leave. You believe that. I believe that.
Yeah.
But guys like us who love this job more than anything in the world, to be at the caliber of where we are with the love for this job, I feel I can't survive without the job.
Right.
It's not an identity for me. It's a true love. And you never want to lose your true love. And I think it's hard. Maybe because
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
It just, we live and breathe this. It's like, I know you off this stupid camera. Right?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying.
Like, a guy like you, you're all in.
Yo, yeah.
You're all in. And I think that when we have this mindset or this ability of thinking that, well, this job is going to be here when I leave. This kitchen will be here when I leave. Like, it will be. But when you have a way of thinking about that in the moment, or thinking about it daily, you're never truly committed. It's almost like having one foot out the door in a relationship at all times. You're never truly committed.
Okay.
It's a relationship. It's a love.
Right.
When you have one foot out the door the entire time, you're never truly committed or truly in love.
Uh-huh.
I went kind of off on the sidetrack there, but I don't like when people say, fuck it, like, I'm just one guy out of thousands, you know, I'm one guy out of fucking million in the fire service. Like, no, like if you treat it, own it, respect it, love it, and be loyal to it, this job will take care of you forever. And I think that we're losing this. We're losing this with the generation because they don't fully love it. Some, not all.
Agree to disagree. And I agree that the company will take care of you. And
yeah, no, you're right. You're right.
Listen, I landed where I did out of Proby School. I went straight to the 1927 Yankees. I went straight to Murderers Row. Doesn't matter who's working that day. Not everyone's fortunate to do that. I'm going to hurt some feelings here. Someone has to work for the Mets. But that goes beyond firefighting. That's the guys that work there. You have anyone getting promoted? You
Sure.
do? Okay. We got a guy getting promoted, and man, I'm telling you right now, it's going to hurt. And if I could work with this guy, I love that guy. He's a great human being. He's a smart guy. He's a very good fireman. I'm going to miss him. But that's the caliber of guys that are in that company. Are we busy? Yep, we are. I want to be busier. Do we go to fires? Yeah, we do. That's our job, though. Every guy took an oath to protect life and property to the citizens and visitors of this city. That's the job. All we have, I feel, is each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we take care of each other.
When I say the job,
Okay.
I mean the family of the job.
Oh, okay.
Not necessarily like the paycheck.
All right.
Like
yeah.
it's but the same thing.
Sure.
So I agree with what you're saying.
Okay, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
It is something greater than you.
Oh,
And
100%.
So when we go down this road of saying, even with the rigs, we're not washing, it's not our rig. It's a spare. It's not ours. Well, no, that's yours for the tour.
Right, yeah.
It's yours for the month,
Right.
the year, whatever you have, the spare rig,
Yeah.
take care of it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just the way I look at it. Some people may look at it differently. Having one foot out the door in anything in life would never truly be successful.
Okay.
So with everyone's thinking like, fuck the job, they don't care about us. Fuck the city, they don't care about us. In reality, it's like, okay, yeah, I dismiss all that. I'm just not into that. I'm into crawling down hallways, you know? Like, I want to talk about how to force the door, how to pull steel in it, how to crawl down a hallway. We got off track, but
Right.
what I'm getting at is that you have to love this job. I
Oh,
see
yeah.
firsthand people dismissing the job for whatever reason it may be,
Okay.
not being truly in love with it. And it shows in companies that most guys are in love. And I'm sure you have a couple guys at one point that came through that didn't work out, that moved on because they weren't truly in love with it. And you have to be in love with it to do the runs, to do the work, to take the ball breaking, to be a part of that core.
Oh, yeah. But each guy is different too. I said it before, I'll say it again. Like there's legends that worked in my company that are known throughout the fire service. At the same time, though, every guy is different. If you ask me, the day my senior man retires, that guy's a fucking legend. The hands down. When you spend your entire career in the ghetto, dealing with what the ghetto, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Running your entire career, and you and I are extremely fortunate that this department has many avenues to go down. You know, crossing the floor, SOC, getting promoted, fire marshals, the Marine unit, going to teach. If you don't take any of those options and you put everything you have into one thing, to me, no, you're a legend.
Yeah.
But you're different. You're that silent professional. But again, every guy is different.
Yeah. And every company
You know,
has one.
and
My
I think
chauffeur
so.
right now,
yeah,
aces. My chauffeur's a fireman, aces.
right.
And that's that guy.
Yeah.
It's funny, this morning we're at the kitchen table talking. I was talking with one of the guys, he has 8 to 10 years, somewhere.
Okay.
He has 8. We were just talking. I said to him, I go, who's the next guy? He says, what do you mean? I go, who's stepping into that role of the guy who's going to be the fear factor, the discipline, the guy who's truly setting the standard that's already been set from generations before, but know the standard, dials it in, and brings it to the junior guys and say, no, guys, this is how we do it. You can't ride the coattails of the generations that came before you. And I see so often guys are riding coattails, it's standard slipping at the same time. Before you know it, it's a pass rep shop. And there's so many of them out there. I'm sure you see them up by you. I'm seeing them in different places. I think a lot of it is because guys aren't sticking around for 40 years anymore. Guys aren't being that one to say, this is how we do things, out of fear from the civilian side of the job influencing the brotherhood. There's fear there.
That is the most important thing about the senior man. Like,
The job wants a senior man from us. They don't want that. They don't want it. They don't want the senior.
Right. But again, man, that's
The senior man sets a standard that's been set generations and generations.
100%.
And they want that. They want the culture of this job. Who's they? I don't know. But somebody wants it. They want to take it from us.
You break that down to each individual company.
Yes.
And each individual firehouse. And like I said, if you choose to take any of the options that this job has to offer, by all means, each guy is entitled to their own career. But like I said, to be, in my opinion, to be a well-respected senior man, I think is the hardest title to obtain on this job. I've been fortunate enough, that's all I've worked with. And when you set the standard, this is the standard. You're here now, we're gonna get you here, and then you're gonna go above it. You're gonna exceed it. That's the culture.
And that's something we can't teach. It's shown over time. It's developed over time. People want to, there's so many, FDIC, right? It's this week.
Okay.
You could go through the pamphlet and be like, oh, look, another class on culture, another class on culture. That's great. Have all the classes and conferences and talks on culture.
Okay.
I can't come into your department and teach you what culture is. That's something that's passed down from the senior men.
100%. 100%. But it also the individual too. Again, I'm not trying to insult anyone in any way. I think there's a difference between if you work in the ghetto or not, because there's a lot that comes with the ghetto. But I'm not saying just because you work in a ghetto makes you a good fireman, and just because you work in the suburbs makes you a bad fireman. No, there are firemen that work in the suburbs that are aces, and there are hairbags that work in the ghetto. But when you choose to remain, and I hate to talk negatively about my area, but when you choose to remain in a poverty-stricken, violence, drugs, dirty, homelessness, when you choose to remain there, in my eyes, you know, the senior man in the house, he's approaching 30 years. He's been on Webster Avenue his entire career. That's, to me, that speaks volumes about that guy.
Yeah.
And going back to the communication with my engine officer, there's a sense of like, oh man, this guy's been through the ringer. You know what? We're going to be okay today. You know, we're going to be okay. The senior truck boss is approaching 40. So any young guy who goes to the truck in my firehouse who are in his groups, I mean, that's priceless right there. So when you're working with that guy, it's kind of like, oh man, this guy has been around the block more than once. You know what?
Something you just said.
We're going to be okay.
This morning at the kitchen table, just chatting with the guys, this came up, talking about, you know, oh, we get your probies out next class. We're trying to like recruit who we going to get, all these things. Every firehouse kitchen talks the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I was talking with the one guy and I said, it's not necessarily looking at the numbers of the runs and the workers, all those things. That all factors in. But if I was putting my kid anywhere, I want to know who the captain is, how much time he has, his pedigree, and the lieutenants that work under him. What's their pedigree and what's their time? Because that's what's going to mold the future of my son going on this job.
Oh, yeah.
It's not necessarily how many fires they're going to. It's how many fires they've been to, so they can say, you know what, kid, I made this many mistakes in my career. I will show you the way to do this the right way.
Right.
And then I'll take you to a couple of fires. I'll take you to places you never thought you could go.
Sure.
But that comes from incredible officers. So when you're placing your kids, or you're looking at your hooks for any probie trying to go anywhere out of the academy, inquire about who the captain is. Inquire about who the lieutenants are. And see where they've worked, because that's ultimately the learning experience you're going to get as a title, and then you'll get the real experience in real time with the brothers in the next step, you know?
Yeah. No, you make a good point there.
I mean, look at 58 Truck not long ago. Look at those officers. They've been there.
Oh, man, come on.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's of our guys, his father was the captain in 88. He had 40 plus years.
Yeah.
I got detailed to his company, and he asked me, what do you think you're going to do in your career? I was like, you know what, Cap? I don't know. At that time, I only had maybe 2-3 years. He goes, well, there's nothing wrong with being a senior man. It makes my job that much easier.
Yeah, I love that.
You know, and this is coming from a guy who's got 40 years on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it circles back to communication. And let's bring that back to the fire force. Wait till this guy goes by.
Sure.
Communication, the fire floor.
Sure.
You're talking Nozzleman, engine officer. You had that conversation. For me, the conversation now shifts. Like, I guess with the Nozzleman in that moment, it's not too much. You're just concentrating, mentally preparing for going to war, really.
Mm-hmm.
That alone is like, okay, I have the nozzle. It relies on me. That's enough stress level to realize you have to have that mindset that we are going to war.
Yeah, you already know my outlook on that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as an officer now, I learned this to being in a truck most of my career.
Okay.
Short time in the engine, as firefighter, short time in the engine as an officer. But I did learn in those moments that you can't take the riding list for granted. I can't just rely on that 48 engine. I don't have to even know who's working that tank. There's some value to that, but it can set you up for failure. You have to talk to the guys. And this goes even back to the kitchen, the morning. You see how guys' vibe is going. This is why we got to get to work on time. And when on time, I mean you're an hour and a half, 2 hours early.
Okay.
Just to kind of get the vibe of the guys going. This is more of maybe a backstep thing. Like,
Right.
kind of see who's going through what. Who's having trouble at home. Whose kid's getting in trouble. This, that. Whose parents are sick. That all factors to that moment before you cross that threshold where I now say, are you ready? And you say, yeah, I'm ready. And I always say, are you sure?
Okay.
I'll give you 1 out.
Okay.
If you're not sure that you're ready to go to war with me,
Right.
you can tell me right now. Have some humility.
Right.
And it can be simple as, boss, my hood's fucking with, my chin strap. Just tell me.
Right.
Boss, I'm not ready. I'll fix it real quick. You ready to go now? I learned that my job as an engine officer, number one, call for water, say water's on the fire. Ultimately, make sure my men are safe to go to war, put them in the places they never thought they could go, and then you bring them back. That comes from having that dynamic where I say, are you ready? You say yes. If you're sure, I say, are you sure? You say yes. I go, let's go. There's no turning back after let's go. If you turn back, you better find a new place to work, because the only place, as we say, we've said this before, is you're going is to the burn center when you're an engine company, knowing that the brothers and sisters are searching the floor above. Brothers and sisters are beyond where you are right now. It's so important that we have that understanding. Our job teaches that. I'm not sure at the job we're teaching how serious that moment is, that conversation. Then we go. It's something to think about, and it's something as a young officer I learned the hard way, that you have to have that moment, that intimate moment, that 30 seconds of making sure you're good can set you up at 3 minutes of success or 3 minutes of extreme failure. But having a 30-second conversation as the guys are getting ready to go, I feel is important. That's my communication.
I agree. Again, I'm not an officer, but that couple seconds, going back to the story I told you, just that couple seconds where my lieutenant was setting the tone, setting the pace. This is how we're going to do this right now. Calm me down. Without him, probably didn't even realize he was doing it, because he's that type of guy. He's bouncing around in Queens. I hope that guy ends up in an engine, man, because he's a phenomenal engine officer. You know what I mean?
He probably hopes he ends up in a truck, though.
I'll still talk to him.
So we cross the threshold. We call for water. Here comes your water. Boom, boom, boom. You bleed the line. Now, truck officer, communication. I come down. I grab the officer of the engine. I say, bro, it's down the hall, 2 doors on the left. My cab man's got the door closed. You have that communication. That's the communication I want to talk about. It's like, yeah, we find the fire. We direct the engine into place. Now,
that's huge, yeah.
It's huge. And that's the sole purpose of the first new truck, which often gets misled in training on the national level, was that the first mission of the truck company is to find that fire. Forcible entry to get into the building, and then finding that fire to direct the engine. Because we know that water on the fire, right, saves more lives.
Correct. Yeah.
That's so important we do that. But it comes back to communication. It comes back to being that, not a middleman, but that negotiator.
Mm-hmm.
You come down, Mike, you good? Yeah, the fire's down the hall on the right. What's after that as a Nozzleman? What are you doing next? What are you thinking about? What are you communicating with your officer? Like, you have any communication?
I think it's situational. I think in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I hope we're getting it. And again, you got to be cognizant of your surroundings. So you got to be like, all right, we're operating, we're flowing water, and it's still getting hotter. Something's up. So you kind of got to have your wits about you. And then obviously, too, communication with your officer, that shine the light, here, there, or whatever, or hit it over here. I think if you have a seasoned Nozzleman, like, officers don't tend to do that. But then, as the bosses, you ever have fire wrap around you? Yeah, no, that's an uneasy feeling. I've been in situations, too, where they're like, It's now behind us.
Funny you bring this up because the communication aspect of that is so important that if you're a nozzleman, you listen. You have to be able to listen. So I think communication as a nozzleman, it's not so much communicating, it's listening to what your officer says.
Yeah, you're really not really doing much
No.
talking.
That's
No.
so important that because once you think you're making, a lot of times you're not.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're operating for a while and you're like, wow,
Yeah.
it's not changing.
So we had a fire where that was all happening.
Okay.
And then it's a long story, which I'm not going to get into, obviously. But next thing you know, fire's behind us. I could not communicate with the nozzleman. The line was opening. He was flowing water. He was hitting nothing. The fire's not coming down the hallway the wrong way. So that was the Asses and Elbows moment. Learning experience for all of us.
Sure.
But I think the main tool as a nozzleman, as far as communication, is being able to listen to your officer, but also listening to
For
when
your
you're
line.
operating the
your
line. What's up?
Listen to your line.
Yes, if you hit, and then you open. Now it changes. You hit the silence. Oh, I got a room. I got a door.
I got a room. I got a window. I got a hole. Something.
All that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, listening is the communication. Let's talk about this moment now. This is the moment of Zen. You know, and you can. I'm not a military guy, but I'm a military buff, right?
Okay.
So I think
Yeah,
we
so
all,
am I.
yeah, we're all into that.
Yeah.
So you watch these movies. There's a firefight going. And guys are in the foxhole just talking matter of fact. In the sense where like the shit's on, but they are communicating with one another. And I don't know if that's reality, and I could be totally off.
Okay.
But I feel like it may be accurate because think about the fire room, the fire apartment. As much as this shit is crazy going on to the outside eye, watching what's going on, we're in there just talking. Like, and there's a gentlemanness about it. So if we find the fire, now we come down this skinny hallway. Now we're met head on. Nozzleman, truck officer, or irons guy, just trying to navigate how we get the line down the hallway.
Right.
Small project, small tenement. You're coming down, brother. You got it. It's like having that nice communication
Mm-hmm.
between engine and truck firemen.
Yeah.
And the communication of working together.
That happens all the time.
As we know, the nozzle is the best position. So it's fun to be on the inside team, to have the front row seat of watching a nozzleman go to work.
Right.
You know, not being the engine officer. That moment is Zen. And
Uh,
how we share that between engine and truck. So we break balls in the kitchen. We have all these communication factors leading up to the moment we cross the threshold into the fire department. And then we communicate together. And usually we're just talking like this.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
There could be fire rolling over our heads. We're just having a conversation. And I think that's what makes professional firefighters is the ability to get to that level of to trust the instinct and to trust each other, where that senior officer is talking very calmly, very matter of fact. Hey guys, that's what we're doing, blah, blah, and fire's rolling over our heads. At times that shifts and it's very drastically changing. But
Right.
I think it's important that we maintain that moment of Zen.
When it's, fire's darkening down, you finally got it type of thing. Yeah. Glad you were there. Glad you were working that set. Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no better feeling.
No. No.
Once you know, all of a sudden it dims, the lights dim, and it gets real hot for a second, but then it kind of
Yeah.
backs off. You're like, fuck, we got this. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what makes this job so addictive, really.
Part of it, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
I would have to agree, yeah.
I wanted to talk about that moment. And I don't know if you can put it to words. That's the problem. I think that's why no one speaks of it. For anyone that surfs, it's that moment when you catch the perfect wave. It's that moment if you're a golfer, that perfect drive.
Right.
Baseball player, full contact, fucking grand slam. Like,
Right.
it's that feeling you cannot put into words even if you try.
Probably because the stars have to align, man.
Yeah.
You have to be working. You have to have the nozzle. You have to go to work. You have to be first due. I mean, I've had a lot of third due great work.
Yeah.
But the stars have to align.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it is a great.
All those stars aligning is what makes it so addictive. It's like the lotto. People have an addiction to gambling.
You're chasing the high, man.
Chasing the high,
You're
man.
chasing the high.
That's it.
Yeah.
And that's why you find guys going company to company to company trying to chase that high sometimes. I think that if you just fall in love with who you go to fires with rather than the fires guys are going to, you can find a sense of peace there. There's a sense of peace in that moment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but that has a lot to do with it though, is who you're doing it with.
Yeah.
That's a major factor.
Yeah.
And going back to like that one guy getting promoted, I'm happy for him, but at the same time, man, we're all gonna miss him. He's gonna be a huge loss because he's that type of guy.
Yeah.
You want to go to work with him because you know he's very squared away, but at the same time, you want to go to work with him. And when I say you want to go to work with him now, I mean you just want him to be working.
Love that.
You know what I mean? Because because I want to hear about his next house renovation, or I want to hear something about, he just had another kid. I want to sit down and talk to him. That has major factor in where you're working. Is the caliber of the individuals that make up that company. And then that also, going back to the department, and this job will continue on, but that goes when you're not at work. I'm not going to get into details because, stuff happens in people's lives, but when they do, you show up. Yeah. You know what I mean? You show up, which is huge. And that speaks volumes of the character of the individual. And those are the type of guys that when you have to do what you took that oath to do, I want to do it with those guys.
Yeah.
Those are the guys I want to do it with.
And the best part of it all is that if you do the right thing and you respect, love, honor, cherish unconditionally the job, other places it could be the fire service.
Okay.
But the brothers and sisters you work with, the core, if you take care of them, the best part of all this is they will always take care of you and your family, but you never, ever, ever have to say thank you. You say thank you by doing the right thing for the next brother and sister in need.
Well, yeah. And like I said before, you and I took an oath, and it's part of the job where you're going to get hurt on this job.
Yeah.
When you go down to headquarters, there's a lot of names, unfortunately, on those walls in headquarters.
It crows every time you go.
Okay. And the list of names of guys who didn't make it 20 years is even longer, of guys hurt or sick or whatever. That comes with this job. Everything you do in your career is basically, you signed up for that. You signed up to put yourself out there for a total stranger. So imagine what I would do for someone I actually cared about.
Yeah.
And those are the guys I work with.
Well, we're going to end right there.
You know what I mean? That's what it comes down to.
It is.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it comes down to. And I think that's something that I don't think we're losing. I think the fire service is well.
Okay.
It's healthy. A lot of times you go on podcasts or you write something and you're pointing out the negative things because you're trying to protect the greatest things about the job. But it's okay to say sometimes, you know what? We're doing good. Fire duty's up.
Yeah.
Brotherhood's up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to a firehouse event tonight. I got the stats yesterday, 30% busier than ever before. Things are trending up.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good thing. So we are doing the right thing, and it comes from standards being set, and it's being respected and honored from the guys coming into this job. We're so quick to beat up on the next generation coming in. They don't get it. It's a generation of their phones and this and that. They don't know the difference between diesel and gasoline, all these things, right? Yeah, there's some truth to that, but they still took the oath. They still want to do the job. It's up to us to make sure that they're squared away, ready to go. But it's also up to us. They understand that it is the greatest job in the world. It will always be the greatest job in the world. If you live up to the standard.
100%.
You have to live up to the standard. Appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Once again, as always, though.
It was a pleasure.
Yes.
It was a pleasure.
Thanks for making the trip to Manhattan.
Thanks for having me, man.